All right, in this knife talk video, we're going to be looking at this knife. It's a handmade mini Lanny's clip point by a guy named Brad Jansen, and I found him on Instagram randomly. I think actually you can follow tags on Instagram, and I think I found one of his pictures or posts or whatever under the slip joint paradigm or something. Tag that I followed. So I sent him a message. His knives look pretty cool, and sent him a message to see, just kind of like the process, how ordering goes and things like that, because it is different for different custom makers. I've been trying to find, custom makers who have an ordering process and a price range that makes sense for me in the next, year or two. Right now, or over the past couple months, because I think I'd like to get some custom knives rather than just constantly buying every GEC knife that comes out in case and stuff like that. More focus on getting exactly what I'm looking for and things like that, and just buying fewer knives but more of what I definitely am looking for. But anyway, I asked him, and he actually said that he doesn't do orders. So he doesn't do orders. You can't order a specific knife, things like that. He just makes knives, and then if somebody wants to buy one, they can buy something that's available. So he sent me a picture of what he had available, and this obviously was one of the knives. He also had a couple other things available that I had to really convince myself not to buy. He had a larger, I would even say it looked a little bit less like a Lanny's clip point, more like a Trapper. But a larger one, but it was in 1095 steel, which I not that I don't like 1095 steel, but I think from a custom maker, I'd be looking more for stainless steels, higher end steels, things like that. It was also in orange G10 like this, but he also had some really great looking fixed blades. He had a camp knife, which was like a real long, kind of a slender blade with no guard. Just looked like a really great outdoor camping knife. Really well made looking. And then he had a Bowie with a guard, a Hammond or Hammond, however you say it. Just really great looking. And then a Sanmai Hunter that looked awesome too. I really wanted that one, but I already have some hunting fixed blades, and I really don't carry fixed blades that often, so that was how I convinced myself not to get those. But I actually am going to send the picture to my brother, who is more interested in fixed blades, I think, than I am. And then also he had a bushcraft knife. So just some really cool knives. And when he told me the prices, I was really surprised. I think that it's because it's not his... actually, I don't know that it's not his full-time job, but kind of got that feeling just because he said that he doesn't take orders because it takes all of the fun out of it. So I think it's that knife making is more of a passion thing for him. He does it because he likes it, because he likes knives, than it is like a career choice. Nothing at all wrong with that. I actually think that's kind of cool. I mean, that way he's really enjoying the knives that he's making and putting passion into them rather than just doing it because, it's what he has to do. But they were really reasonably priced, I thought, especially considering the materials and that they looked well made. And this one was the same. So I decided to get this one. It's about 3 3/8 inches closed, which is smaller than most Lanny's clip points. Now, kind of to talk about that, he actually didn't call this a Lanny's clip point. He didn't really call it anything, to be honest. He just kind of listed them. But I do think that it looks like a Lanny's clip point. So the Lanny's clip point design or frame or pattern is one that Tony Bose created. He made a few knives in this type of a pattern, and ended up selling the first few to one of his friends who was named Lanny. So it became called the Lanny's clip point, and it's one of the most widely made by custom makers slip joint patterns. I think that it just has kind of a custom look to it somehow, if that makes any sense. But it seems like a lot of custom makers make them. Like I know Jared Oser makes them, Romano knives, Taylor knives, Meads knives. Lots of people make, lots of custom makers. Bobby O'Toole makes really nice Lanny's clip points. Make really, they all make really nice Lanny's clip points. And this looks a lot like one. So what is a Lanny's clip point? It's usually, well, it's always a single blade clip point knife. And it has a kind of a trapper style handle. So in the sense that it has a thinner area towards the blade of the knife, and it gets a little wider with a rounded butt area towards the end of the handle, and comes together at a point. So very similar to a trapper handle, you know, probably more like, if you're familiar with GECs, like a GEC 74, but a little bit more curvature to it. And that's kind of true for the clip blade also. So a Lanny's clip point usually has a little bit more curvature. So you see this has more belly than some clip points. That's true a lot of the times for a Lanny's clip point. They tend to be a little bit curvier. They tend to have a swedge, not a full or a long clip like on a Turkish clip point, but not a short clip either. So you can see that it's kind of a curved clip, and it's a little longer. It's maybe about half the length of the blade. So that's what a Lanny's clip point is, but they are usually bigger than this. This one, like I said, is about 3 3/8 inches closed, which is a nice size. I like it as a size. To talk about the ergonomics here, first of all, at 3 3/8 inches closed, this fits in a lot of the watch pockets or fifth pocket, whatever you want to call it, change pocket, on jeans that I wear. Not that I'm wearing jeans right now because it's super hot out the past week or so, but even at that size, I can still get a 4-finger grip on it. So, you know, kind of a normal, the way everybody checks ergonomics on a knife grip, I get 4 fingers. Now, this finger is kind of going over the edge, but it's not anywhere near the blade. I can still, you know, use it in that grip and everything. So comfortable in that grip, but the more realistic grip, to be honest, the way that you actually use a knife, or the way I use a knife more frequently, not that I don't use it like this, but more frequently you use kind of a pinch grip. And it fits really well for that. The shape, this curvature at the butt end of the handle, really makes it kind of lock into your hand. See how it's going right into the palm of my hand and then pinching towards the pivot with my thumb and forefinger. Makes it so you can really, you know, get good cuts and really control it well and everything. So I like the ergonomics on it. I think for being a smaller knife, a little bit smaller than the GEC 15 frame, which, you know, a lot of you are probably familiar with, it feels good in the hand in a similar way to the GEC 15. It's a little smaller than the GEC 71, but how that fits into your hand, it's a similar kind of feel to it. So I'm happy with the ergonomics of it. Speaking of the handle, it's a shadow pattern, meaning there's no bolster, and it has a bird's eye pivot. So you can actually kind of see it on this one. You can see it has a nice thick pivot pin, and it's peened into a ring there on both sides, and there's no bolster, right? So that's what a shadow pattern is, a knife with no bolsters. It's G10 the whole way across for the covers, and then it has steel liners. I think these are like 416 stainless or something. I don't think they're CPM-154 like the blade. So moving on to the blade, for now, it is CPM-154. So CPM-154 is different than 154CM. It is a powdered metal version of 154CM, pretty much. And it's a knife, or I'm sorry, a steel that a lot of custom makers use, especially it seems that a lot of slip joint custom makers use CPM-154. And it's a steel that I've heard a lot of good things about. I haven't used it other than on this knife. I have used this knife some so far, but nothing too like strenuous. And it sounds like a lot of people like it. It sounds to be a pretty good knife steel. Maybe not quite at the same super steel level as something like ZDP 189 for edge retention or toughness of CPM 10 CV or whatever it is, but you know, a really good steel. So that's one of the big things that drew me to this knife, is the fact that it has CPM 154 steel. Like I say, I have a lot of knives in carbon steel 1095. GEC pretty much only makes those at this point. They've made some stainless, and I have some of their stainless knives, but pretty much all carbon steel knives. And again, nothing wrong with 1095, but it is nice to not have to worry about this knife rusting. It really won't rust unless you like put it in like a thing of salt water and then let it dry. So, I'm really happy that it has this good steel. It's one of the things that drew me to it. Now, continuing to talk about the blade, it originally, I actually had told the guy I would buy it, and then he told me that it was 0.03 inches behind the edge, so 30 thousandths behind the edge. And that's a pretty thick edge, especially for a smaller knife like this, which isn't going to be used for like heavy cutting tasks, so it's more of a slicer. I was going to try it out still and see how it was, but I didn't even ask him to. But the next day after I asked that, he told me that he went back and reground the edge, or reground the blade with, it was a hollow grind on a 14-inch wheel. He reground it thinner so that it would be a real good slicer, and actually also added this really nice hand-rubbed satin finish. So that's really cool. That didn't increase the price. He didn't ask for anything to increase the price on that. Again, already at a really good price in my mind. And I think that it adds a lot. It does slice well now. I've used this to cut up like tomatoes and stuff like that in the last couple days with Independence Day happening, cooking hot dogs and stuff. And it seems to cut really well. Slices paper really easily and everything like that. And it did come sharp. So I'm really happy that he regrounded. I think that it will make it more feel like a custom knife to me. And I really like this hand rub satin finish also, just like on my Queen Hunter that Birdvis knives rehandled. I think that the hand rubbed satin finish gives it a lot more of a custom look that looks like someone worked on it by hand, and that's the case here. So that's the blade, and I think that it's a nice looking blade also. Good plunge line there. Pretty clean on the plunge line, especially being that it's a hollow grind and everything. So it's good looking. One thing that I did notice also is that there's no like tang stamp or really anything to signify who the maker is. So to kind of move on to another thing, it came with this nice little pouch. So it's just a knife dog's pouch. I think so, it's kind of a pouch that a lot of custom makers use. Pretty perfectly sized for this knife. It has kind of a felty type thing in it, maybe like almost like imitation wool. But it fits really well in here. You just put it in, zip it up. Now, I plan this knife to be a user. Oops, good thing, right? Not much of a collection piece, but it's a nice little touch. I mean, for carrying around if you're gonna transport it to, I don't know, whatever. It's definitely nice to have this. Whoops, really throwing this thing around here. Good thing it's sturdy G10 and everything, right? Yeah, this is a nice little touch. Again, didn't add any price to it. And I think that it's a nice way to ship a handmade knife. But he did throw in a little note, which to say that he took the edge thickness down to put on a hand rub finish, and it's a super slicer now, so that's cool. Thanks, Brad. So I'm keeping this note just in case, I don't know, for whatever reason, if I lost it for a while or something, so I don't forget who the maker is. Now, not that probably will happen, because I actually keep a list, like an inventory of the knives I have for pricing and to make sure I'm not like losing money on sales and things like that too much, and just to make sure I know what I have and when I got it and things like that. But that said, I think that having the note and this little case is nice, being that there's no maker's mark of any sort on the knife. But so that's the blade. The blade's really nice. Now moving on to the construction and the action. So first of all, to get it kind of out of the way, the pins are really well done. Really smoothly finished. No, you can't catch your fingernail on any of them or anything. And along with that, the handle is really nicely rounded. That really helps with the ergonomics. Also just makes it look good, makes it look like a custom. One of the things that also drew me to it was that it has mill relieved liners. So I hope you'll be able to see this. Yeah, you can see it pretty good there, I think. So what the maker Brad did here is the liners, he milled them out so that there is kind of a stepped action to it there or whatever. Where the pivot actually is, it's higher because it was not milled away. And then all around the pivot, and if you look up here, you can see that it's also milled all the way around to the back here, down to where the spring contacts the tang of the knife. It's milled out. So what that does is it takes away a lot of the area of liner touching the tang of the knife that could contribute what's the word, friction, that's what it is. So it makes the action just really incredible. This knife has the best action of any slip joint I have, I believe. I was just comparing it to my GEC 78 American Jack, which I say is the best GEC action that I have, and this is just considerably better. I don't know how much of it is feel and how much you'll actually be able to see and hear, but it is really nice. So snaps really well, really kind of snaps right to that half stop position. The spring is flush, let's see if it'll focus, in the open position, and then when it snaps down to the half stop, really great snap, as you can see. But even more so is the snap closed. So you get it to about, oh no, you get it to about there. So pretty, pretty high angle, and you push it closed, and man, does it snap closed. So really great walk and talk, that sound that, I think a lot of people really like on a slip joint. It has that better than any knife I think I have. And it just really snaps closed. So I'm really happy with the action, and I think that the mill relieved liners really help with that. Now, moving on to the two small issues that it has. It does sit slightly off center when closed. Now, this is a pretty thick blade. So, it's not going to touch the liner. It's not going to, you can't really push it over to where it's going to touch the liner. And you actually can push it back to centered. But it does tend to close a little off center. Now, like I say, I really don't think that it's going to move to touch the liners, so it's not something that's a big deal. And I do think that probably the fact that it is has mill relieved liners contributes to that. If the liners were full length, then they would be, contacting both sides of the tang of the knife when it was closed, and probably keeping it a little bit more centered. I don't know that for sure, but it's something that I kind of suspect. But again, I really don't think that it's going to touch the liners. It doesn't seem to be getting worse in the centering. You can't push it over too much to touch it, and you can center it. So, I think that it's not a huge deal. And with that said, I don't know if I mentioned this, I'm kind of forgetting now. It doesn't have any blade play. It's super solid. Absolutely no, I've really tried to feel for it, and there's no blade play when it's open. So that's that. And then the one other thing is that it does have, it does sit a little low. The spring sits a little low when it's closed, so that there are some slate gaps. So you can see, well, I don't know how well you can see, but there are some slate gaps that go from the top of the spring to about right here. So right where my fingernail is, or I guess here, at the front of my pad of my finger there. So there are some gaps. I think that those, again, are partly due to the fact that the spring does sit a little low. You can see that there's kind of a lip there. You can catch your fingernail on it. I know that that's something that people see as a real big sign of quality. It's something that, I do appreciate. I think it's better if it sits totally flush and if there's no gaps. But I don't think that's going to affect the function, the use of this knife at all, not in the slightest. And it's something that I can overlook, considering the really high quality materials with the orange G10 and the CPM-154 steel. Really well done handle with the great ergonomics, the super great action, really superb walk and talk. I can overlook, and then also considering the fact that it was really inexpensive for being a 100% handmade knife. I can overlook the slight off-centering and the gaps. So that's pretty much everything. Oh, last thing, I kind of forgot to mention this. It does have a nail nick, as you can see. You've probably noticed that I've just been pinching it open. Pinching it open works really well, and it's really easy to get the pinch grip on it. But the nail nick also works well, and I think that it is placed really well for it to be an easy pull. So when you use the nail nick, it does really make it an easy knife to open. But as you can see, pinching is easy also. So this is my relatively new Brad Jansen handmade mini Lanny's clip point in CPM-154 steel, orange G10. Really well made. I'm happy with it. I've been carrying and using it, and I've been enjoying it. Those two small issues with the slightly off-centeredness and the gaps here between the spring and liner, I can overlook those because of everything else about the knife. So if you're interested, you know, in maybe getting less, I think you can find custom knives of big price ranges. If you're interested in one that's well made at the lower end of the price range for a slip joint or a really well done fixed blade, I think that from my experience just with this one knife, I think that Brad Jansen is a good option. You can look him up on Instagram. I didn't find him on Facebook or any website or anything, so I think Instagram's the best way to go. But, you know, let him know that you saw this video and that you're interested in a knife, and maybe he'll have something that you'll like. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If so, don't forget to like it. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. I always try to answer those. And if you would like to get updates on other videos, just subscribe to my channel, and you can get notifications, or you can not get notifications. Just subscribe so you can stay up to date with all the videos I post and everything. And otherwise, don't forget to go out and do good.